There were once two brothers. One of the brothers sowed crops and tended them as they grew, making sure they were fertilised and irrigated, cleared of weeds and pests. He harvested them at the right time, and as was the custom, he offered a portion of the harvest to his Lord. The other brother raised livestock, mostly sheep, and he led them from place to place as a shepherd does, making sure they had the food and water they needed. He protected them from predators and helped out with the lambing when it was time. When lambing was done, as was the custom, he offered the choicest cuts from the firstborn of his flock to his Lord. For the Lord's part, he did his best to look after the brothers, the whole family. He made sure they had land to grow crops on and fields where the flocks could roam. He protected them as he did with all his people and did the best he could by them. He was a good and generous Lord and well deserved the portion that was offered to him. And so when the brothers came to make their offerings, the Lord was clear that whilst the choicest cuts of the firstborn lambs were received with thanks, the portion of the harvest that the first brother had brought was not quite up to the standard he expected. As a master who had provided generously, he expected his people to offer the best of what they had in return. The result of all of this was that the brothers fell out with one another. Jealousy caused their relationship to fall apart. This story found in the Bible tells us about the kind of generosity that God expects from his people. He expects us to give out of the best that we have. It reminds me of a time I was talking to someone whose job it was to take aid out to areas that had been struck by disaster. Part of the process was always to sort through the donations, and a lot of donations of clothes and things had to be discarded. And that's because people often gave the stuff that wasn't good enough for them anymore. Their old jeans with holes in tops with armpit stains on them. Stuff that wasn't good for them to wear, but they figured would probably be fine for someone in a disaster-strewn area. Of course, that wasn't all that was in among the donations. There was other stuff that was brand new or stuff that looked brand new. Even survivors of disaster deserve better than stuff that we would otherwise be throwing in the bin. God expects his people to be generous out of the best of what they have, not just the stuff that's so unimportant that we won't miss it. There is a sacrifice to be made. This is hard, and there's a balance to be kept, but the principle from the story of the brothers keeps coming back, I think. That we should be generous with the first and the best of what we have. If it's a choice between getting a new pair of jeans for myself or sending a new pair of jeans out to someone who is in desperate need and has nothing else, it should be clear what my priority should be. I keep coming back to the story of the very early church in Acts 4. That talks about how the church is supposed to be generous with one another. It says there were no needy people among them. And surely, as God's people, our generosity should extend at least this far, to make sure there is no needy people among us. I wonder who you can be more generous with this week. Do you have a little more time you can give? Can you be a little more patient, a little more merciful, a little more understanding? Is there practical support that you can lend? Our God is outrageously generous, and he's calling us to be the same.